Welcome to Outdoorsy, the podcast where we are redefining what it means to be outdoorsy and reclaiming the word itself. I'm your host, Madeline. I am so excited to welcome my next guest, Katie. Katie is the founder of Hot Girl Hikes, a community that brings together women to share their love of the outdoors in an approachable way. In Katie's mission to visit all of the U.S. national parks, she actually created something even bigger, this amazing supportive space for women to connect, hike, and explore together. Through Hot Girl Hikes, Katie is redefining what it means to be outdoorsy and proving that the outdoors can be both empowering and fun and hot. I can't wait to dive into her journey and the inspiration behind Hot Girl Hikes, her mission to encourage more women to get outside and explore. So Katie, welcome to the show.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
I'm so excited you're here too. So let's just start off hot. How do you define outdoorsy?
To me, being outdoorsy is literally just anyone who enjoys being outside. I definitely did not grow up being quote unquote outdoorsy. So I don't think I even really started to consider myself as quote outdoorsy until really this whole thing came about. I'm even like struggling to say outdoorsy about myself as an adjective right now, even though objectively I understand that that applies to me.
Completely relate. I still struggle with it too. I always find myself getting trapped in the mindset of like, well, I'm not really outdoorsy. Or like, that's not really it.
Yep.
But then that's like the whole reason why this podcast exists is to be like, no, if you enjoy being outdoors, you're outdoorsy.
Exactly. We overthink it. We put labels on it. As a people, we love a label. I love a label. Like, I love to talk about myself. I'm into astrology. Talk to me about Myers-Briggs. Talk to me about Enneagram. The list goes on. I love to be put in a box. And at the same time, don't put me in a box. Like, I don't need to be attached to any certain label that I don't feel super strongly about. But people always want to do it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I feel like labels are super helpful for ourselves when we're thinking about ourselves and how we identify, and helpful that way to kind of give ourselves like a framework to work within or to kind of learn and grow. But it's really annoying and unnecessary when people place a label on you. It's like, no, it's fine when I do it, but don't do it to me.
Yes, exactly. And being able to, sometimes I think I struggle with other people labeling me because then it feels like I have to live up to that standard. Versus if I put it on myself, then I'm always available to like grow and extend beyond and like stop identifying with that, versus it being like a whole conversation. Oh, I'm not outdoorsy anymore. I'm actually this now, which before we started recording, we did talk about how many eras I've been through on the internet. So it's something that I think is near and dear to my heart. I love creating content and putting myself out there and being open to evolving, ever changing, not getting caught up in labels, just like being yourself at the end of the day is what's important.
So that kind of goes perfectly into the next topic, which is like, tell me about your relationship to the outdoorsy world. Like, did you grow up outdoorsy? Like, how did you kind of get into this world? What's your relationship with the outdoorsy community?
Yeah, for sure. I was definitely not an outdoorsy child. I was not a super active child. Like, I would do dance or I would be active, like just, I don't know, being a child, but I didn't play sports. I was like minorly in the Girl Scouts, and like, this gets me on a whole other rabbit hole of like gender and the outdoors, that like Girl Scouts had such a lesser emphasis on the outdoors versus other activities. I feel like I was always collecting crafting badges or like homemaking badges in Girl Scouts, or like entrepreneurship badges and stuff like that, versus camping for like the Boy Scouts, or like archery and more outdoorsy activities and stuff like that. So I didn't have a whole lot of that in my DNA from childhood or anything like that, and it's definitely not anything that my family is super into, outside of like hunting. Like, I'm from the middle of the country, so it's not a big hiking area, very flat. So just the opportunity for things that I enjoyed about the outdoors never really presented themselves to me until I was an adult, until I could travel on my own, until I could really fund my own adventures. And then it was like a whole new world. I was hooked immediately.
So how have you then, as an adult, been able to explore the outdoors and kind of figure out what you like? Like, talk to me about that That era of Katie.
Yeah, yeah. So as a grown up, because even still now, sometimes I'm like, oh, I'm just goofing off, and no, 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 like you're a fully formed adult here. I have just trial and errored it. I feel I got into hiking, as like an active recovery moment because one of my other eras was bodybuilding. I did that for like a couple of years, and so they encourage you to like do walking and stuff like that. And hiking was something that I could do at the same time, and like it was an exercise based thing. Plus, I moved to the East Coast, which has a little bit more outdoor opportunity than Southern Illinois. Um, so there was more opportunity as I grew up and moved away from where I was a child, and they sort of happened naturally to me. Like the hiking the outside, that was pretty much the first step, and then COVID hit, and then everybody had a renaissance with the outdoors, if you will. So that became a natural, I don't know, avenue. Like I'm trying to think. Like honestly, I'm not into like paddleboarding or climbing. I did take one climbing class, but um, my big focuses like are hiking, camping. I've recently gotten into, but outside of that, I don't do my mountain biking. Pretty much anything that I can seriously get hurt, not my jam. Anything that requires me to have short fingernails, not my jam. Like I am a nails girl at the end of the day. So climbing and getting my hands in those rocks, not really for me.
Oh my God, I was packing up my camping stuff, kind of cleaning it up and stuff before the summer season this year, and I found like a nail that I had broken off because I always get acrylics, like I get long acrylics, and I was like,
Yes.
this is so funny, like this is quintessential like Madeline, like
It's a
finding a nail.
relic. Yes, and sometimes I even know like it places me back in time because I never get the same nails twice. Like,
Yeah,
oh yeah,
yeah.
I had that hot pink nail and this is what happened. Yeah, it's a fossil.
So true, so true. So how did you get into hiking? Was it did you
Mm.
join like another hiking group? Did you go out by yourself? Like how did you get into that particular
Yeah,
activity?
I mostly went out by myself. I lived in Wisconsin for a little while, and they have a really great state park up there called Devil's Lake. And it's really fun. It's minimal elevation, I mean, in the grand scheme of things. But it was just something to do to get out of Madison, where I was living at the time. And friends and I would go and stuff like that. But when I seriously started hiking, I was mostly going by myself. I was also going with my husband. But it's a solo activity. I didn't really have a community, and I think that's why Hot Girl Hikes feels so important to me now, to create a community that feels like something I could be a part of. So many hiking communities are not as specific as Hot Girl Hikes, and I love a specific group. It helps me feel connected and talking points. Sometimes when it's like a big general interest, it's kind of scary, like, oh, who's going to be there? Like, I don't know if they're going to vibe with me or not, but I try to set the tone for Hot Girl Hikes from the beginning.
Yeah, I love that. I think specificity is key, and that's been like a common thread with a lot of the other guests I've talked about when
Oh, yeah.
community comes up is how important it is to have that kind of share some sort of shared commonality because when
Mm,
these communities or these groups are really broad, oddly enough, it tends to attract a very specific, similar type of person, which is
hmm.
usually white, straight, cishet men. And sometimes it's really difficult to find belonging in those communities as well. So, this is like the great segue into you talking about hot girls hikes. Like for those of people who are listening at home and are like, "What the hell are they talking about? What is hot girl hikes?" Please tell everybody listening, like, tell us about what you've got going on, what you've started, this incredible community, and some of the things you've done. And yeah, I'd love to know like how this even started. Tell
Yeah,
me,
get
tell
the
me all the
download. You'll
things.
get the full
Yeah,
download. This is a gab
yeah,
sesh ultimately.
yeah.
So, we can just start at the beginning, I suppose.
Let's do it.
And around July 2022, I had been working on my podcast, one of the other eras that we talked about before this came up. And I was at an impasse because I had this idea brewing in my mind around finding other hikers who are like me, who like to wear the athletic skirt, who like to match their top to their boots, who care about the color of their backpack, who are not what you would think of as a typical hiker. Like I keep an extra lip gloss in the side pocket, you know? And that felt like a gap in the content that I was consuming now that I was getting more into like the outdoorsy community online, and the TikTok algorithm is God more or less, so it was feeding me all of this stuff and I was just not really resonating with it. I was just feeling like, this is fine, but like not for me, not for me. And with my background in like other forms of media and content and everything like that, I thought I could do that. And so I did. I'm very much like a think it, do it, see what happens type of person. I'm not afraid to fail most of the time, like, falling off a mountain and breaking a nail. That is definitely one of the ways I choose not to fail. But
that's where we draw the line.
Yeah, that's where we draw the line. But weird projects on the internet, totally fair game. So I posted a video and I started a series giving my number one top tip for each national park that I've been to so far. I wanted to help people make the most of their time in the national parks. I love the national parks. I'm, like you said, on a mission to hit all of them and see just the vast beauty and wide array of everything that this country and land has to offer. Like, it's a huge chunk of land, and all the way to Alaska and American Samoa and Hawaii and all these other places that are so amazing and so incredible, and you can't really appreciate them. I mean, you can. I don't want to say that, but it's so much easier to appreciate them there in person and see them with your own eyes, and I just love it so much. It makes me so happy. So I wanted to help other people make the most of their time there, and in an authentic voice for me, which comes across like this. Definitely a girl's girl, which was not always the case. To like take a little side detour, like I definitely was not a girl's girl. I was afraid of girls. Like I thought they were mean, and I thought I was one of those pick-me's that's like, oh, I like to hang out with boys because they're less drama and whatever and blah 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 bullshit, like all of that crap. Like that was definitely me in high school, and I was afraid of people being mean to me and people judging me and people thinking like that girl's weird, because I am like a weird kid at heart ultimately. And I grew to appreciate everything that female friendships can offer me and that I can offer it, and I've completely grown out of that, and in an effort to atone for my sins am now going out of my way to make sure that everybody feels like they can be part of a girl group. But rewinding to July 2022, this series about these tips for the parks really took off and proved to me that there was a space for somebody like myself who feels girly and feels fun and just like has this less serious tone about them in the outdoors, and is not like doing it to say like I'm the most outdoorsy person out there. I'm always gonna say like if you want to put it on a sliding scale, like I'm never going to be all the way at the very end 100%, and I like that about myself ultimately. So that is sort of the beginnings of what we now have as Hot Girl Hikes, was just this TikTok account. And today it is a business where I take groups of girls that mostly are strangers on the internet to different national parks all across the country, and we explore, we take on, I always say like we're taking on the outdoors, friendship, and hiking or something like that, and I always say it, and I can't even get it right, but yeah, like those are the three big pillars, is like community building, really like a self-actualization, like feeling confident in yourself and who you are. And a lot of times these girls are traveling solo, which is a whole other fun adventure for them. And then of course hiking and being active and feeling settled in your body. Like there's so much beauty in being outside and moving and breathing that fresh air, and it just creates this amazing moment for everybody on the trip that brings us all together and is wonderful.
I love hearing the origin story of this, and also the kind of like self-awareness and the level of transparency you're having about your journey from going from a pick me to suddenly being like, no, wait, like this is who I am. Why am I trying to be any different? And kind of realizing that you can help others not fall to that same fate is really powerful. I mean, I relate to that so much. I actually was just recording my first episode, my solo episode, and I was talking about how I really struggled with confidence and stuff because I tried so hard to fit into this box of like the stereotypical granola-y girl, and it just like never felt right. And I always felt so awkward because I was like trying to fit myself into this box to be more likable to people, you know, and it's
Yeah.
just because and also seeing other women as like competition rather than
Oh my
like
gosh, yeah.
camaraderie. It's like it really messes with your brain. And so that's beautiful that you've been able to like see that in yourself, get over it, and then be like, I'm going to make sure this that other people don't feel this way, and we're going to create a better community that's more supportive and lovely and embraces like the little inner weirdos that we all are, and
Yes.
doesn't pit each other against each other, but rather lifts each other up and gets each other to get outdoors together. It's
Ugh.
amazing.
Yes, exactly. You get it. And the little weirdos, like we just went to Olympic National Park in Washington. You're from the Pacific Northwest area.
Yep.
And we did all the Twilight stuff. And I think that that was the most amazing thing that we could have done on that trip because from the jump, we were committed to being our middle school selves. Like there was no fronting. Everyone was immediately like, just so excited and so happy and so giggly. And actually not everyone on that trip cared about Twilight. Shocker, you know, like it felt to me like the whole world at one point in time, but that was not everyone's reality. And even those girls like caught the energy, like they were just happy to be happy, I think. And when you're embracing your inner 12-year-old, what more could you ask for?
Yeah, and those girls that were into it probably weren't sitting there on the sidelines rolling their eyes and being like, "Ugh, these bitches, that's being so ridiculous." They were
Exactly.
probably like you're saying, giggling along with you and enjoying the energy as well. Like that's what it's all about.
But that's the fear, right? Like that's what you're
Yeah.
afraid of is that someone's going to stand over there at the edge of the group and roll their eyes and think they're cooler than you. And that is why I think setting the tone in my content and my videos and this podcast interview, like from the jump, that is like not the energy that's not tolerated. I've never encountered it in a group, and I pray that that never comes up because it would, of course, have to be a really difficult conversation. Like, get your attitude together, girl, because that's not what we're about around here. But I really don't think that would be a crazy thing to happen that you make it all the way through to one of these trips and you still don't get it. Oof, we're gonna have a heart to heart.
Yeah, yeah. I would be surprised to see that happen. So like honestly, I mean, truly, for everybody listening, like, go follow Katie on all the social media
Ah,
because
thank you.
I love your content. It always is so refreshing and like such a breath of fresh air. And if you are wondering what one of the hot girl hikes is like or what one of these trips is like you share a lot of what the vibe is. So you
Yeah.
can really check it out for yourself and see kind of firsthand. You don't really have to wonder, like, what am I getting myself into? And there's no secrecy around this. There's not like this exclusive elite thing. Like you share a lot about what you guys do, and I love it. It's great.
Yeah. Yeah, I take it very seriously. This responsibility that I feel to these girls that are paying money to be there, that are putting themselves out there, that are doing something that is probably scary. I mean, some of the girls come to me having traveled solo before, but like most of the time, this is everybody's first time traveling by themselves with a group that they don't know. And I, like I said, never want somebody to feel uncomfortable or like they don't fit in. So all of that combined is a weight that I take very seriously as I'm taking people out there. Plus, not to mention, the outdoors are the outdoors. Like you can get into some trouble out there. So I make sure, to take it very seriously as far as safety is concerned as well.
Yeah, so tell people who are listening, like, what are some of those things that you do both to make sure that people are safe, but also that people feel welcome and included and just like comfortable in these trip environments, especially if they're coming and traveling solo for the first time.
Yeah, I think the safety element is the most important, but also sort of the easiest to set the tone around. We run background checks. We meet with everybody beforehand. We, make sure that you're not a weirdo, more or less, like in the bad way. And then when we're on the trips, we have, of course, everybody's like safety contact information should anything happen. We carry around first aid kits. Everybody has all the emergency info distributed to them. But ultimately, I also make sure that everybody understands like you are your own responsibility. You are signing up for this trip. And part of one of the amazing things about the outdoors is a self-reliance, is a willingness to take ownership for your choices and your actions. And there's nobody out there to save you. And ultimately, I will be there to help you and give you extra water and carry, like if you roll your ankle, like we are hoisting you up and carrying you out of there, no problem. But maybe think about the style of boots that you're wearing if you know you have weak ankles, like just stuff like that, that go out of your way to be prepared and you'll have a good time. Like that's the easiest thing about the outdoors, or I don't know, the hardest and the easiest at the same time, is like being responsible for yourself is just like it's a thought, it's a mindset. You just grow into it. Now, getting everybody on board, feeling welcomed, all of that, that's a little trickier. That's a little more ambiguous. It's not as cut and dry. So I like to think that my personality lends itself to being a very welcoming person. But there are people who are nervous. And also, every trip is different. Every trip has a new group dynamic, has a different set of experiences and thought processes and all of that great stuff that makes it so fun and interesting. But I take everybody's like, I ask everybody, like, are you an introvert or an extrovert on their little intake form? Try to use that as like a gauge. And then when I'm on my one-on-one calls, we meet through Zoom first before we go on the trips, get the jitters out, chit chat, make sure that everybody's aligned on what the schedule is and stuff like that. And I try to gauge, like, what do you like? Like, how do you like to be talked to? What is your tolerance for my loud, gregarious personality? Because honestly, I have found that a lot of the girls that come on our trips are a little bit more introverted, are quieter. And of course, there's always somebody to sit up in the front seat with me and chat. But I have found like a lot of the girls that come are girls who want to make new friends. Maybe that's something that they struggle with or that they are pushing themselves to do more of, because it's not innate to them. Like it's a push. Like they have to strive to make friends. So it's just like a really great opportunity for me to create a space that's open for them, icebreaker questions. And I have no shame in being a little bit embarrassed, throwing out the weird questions that everybody's like, oh, this again. And everybody groans. And I'm like, yeah, come on. A little bit like a teacher moment or like a PE moment. But once you sort of get the ball rolling, I love to talk about why everybody's there. We have group dinners together. We go out to eat usually once on our trips. And so we do a lot of group dinners. It's just a great time to bring out questions. I have decks of cards that have like get to know you questions, things like, what's that one called? Like we're not just friends or something along those lines. I don't know. But it helps open things up, and people can jump in when they want to, and letting everybody know that it's a safe space by throwing myself out there ultimately.
I love everything that you're saying, but I do think that like the intangible aspect of it is kind of the most critical, and that's why I mean just from chatting with you right now and a little bit before we started recording, like I can tell that you're so uniquely talented at like getting people to come out of their shell and also feel comfortable. Like I can see you being someone who's like, okay, we're going to be a little bit uncomfortable now and talk about like, our feelings, or
Yes,
like we're going to talk about, we're going to do an icebreaker and it's going to feel silly and it's going to be awkward, but like I'll go first, or like I'm going to put myself out there. And like that is the sign of a good leader in my book, of someone who is able to really rally people around, also put themselves in kind of either self-deprecating or silly positions to kind of like make others feel comfortable and safe. Like I think that's so critical and important. And I mean, oftentimes I feel like with some of these group trips that I've seen advertised, they're being managed or organized by someone who takes themselves very seriously, which is great in some senses if you're doing something that's like highly technical or taking a course or going into some situation that's more unsafe.
Right. If I'm
But
rock climbing, I want a serious person to
yeah,
teach me how to rock
yeah.
climb. Right.
Yeah, exactly. But in this situation, like when the scenario that you're organizing and stuff, this is like perfect. So I think
Yeah.
that hopefully from people listening, they can kind of just get a sense of that intangible vibe of the comfort and level of just welcoming that you provide. So yeah, I think that's incredible.
Thanks. I also usually have a co-host with me. I've done
Yeah.
one trip by myself, so I have gone out on my way to make sure that the person who's co-hosting as well is another safe space, and they bring their own element to it. So hopefully, between the two of us, you can find somebody that you feel comfortable talking to.
That's amazing. So one of the things with the Hot Girl Hikes too is that you guys actually do hiking.
Yeah.
And I was looking at your website, and one of the things you said in the FAQs is like, do you guys go on real hikes? And your
Yeah.
answer is like, there's no such thing as a quote unquote real hike. Like you can
Yeah.
hike or walk 5 minutes, or you can go 4 or 5 miles. Like there's no qualification of real or not. So like, talk to me a little bit about that stance and kind of the thought process there and your approach there.
Yeah, something that I encountered when I first started hiking was recommendations that were perhaps, I don't know what the right word is, but like not accurate. People are out here saying, like, oh, this 10-mile hike that has 3,000 feet of elevation gain, and I did it in 6 hours and I didn't even feel a thing. And I was like, oh, all right. And it really set a weird level of expectation for myself when I first started hiking of how fast I should be doing things, what elevation gains should feel like, and at what point should I be winded, and is this hard enough or something like that. So I don't like the idea of a quote unquote real hike because it's so subjective. Like, I could have my version of a real hike and it could be completely different from my neighbor next door or the person that I meet on the trail. Like, I could be crossing somebody who's trail running and I'm huffing and puffing. And that doesn't make it any less real for either one of us. But for me or for anyone else to try to say, like, this is a real hike, I just think it sounds silly. Like, I think that you're just trying to sound impressive and cool. And it's like when guys brag about, like, oh, my watch costs this much money. And I'm like, all right, cool. So you have a fancy watch. Like, and I love fancy things. Like, don't get me wrong. I might be impressed by your fancy watch, but I'm not gonna like think that you're better for it. You know what I mean? And I think a lot of times people spend a lot of time like virtue signaling that they're like a better person for having completed this hike, or look how outdoorsy I am because I backpacked this or something like that. And I love and respect all of these outdoor activities as long as you're doing them, responsibly and all that great stuff. But you're not going to like convince me to do something that I don't want to do just to make me feel like I'm a real hiker.
I cannot relate to this more because, yeah, I remember when I first started hiking and I was looking through all these trail reports and stuff, and people would be talking about how easy it was. And then I'd go for the hike and I'd be like, that was really hard. I don't know. It's
Yeah.
maybe I'm the problem. I don't know. But
Right.
and it wasn't, and it was just like my fitness level was different, or I just
Hmm.
hadn't gone on very many hikes at that point, so I didn't like for that one time it was really hard, and then the next time I went on it and I was like, oh, this actually isn't that bad, or it just depends. Like I remember so specifically when I did Kolchak Lake for the first time,
Mm.
everybody was like, this is the most popular hike in Washington. It is easy, like no
Mm.
problems at all. And I was like, that's like one of the hardest hikes personally I've ever done.
Hmm.
And I still, like to this day, look back on that hike and be like, I'm really proud of myself for accomplishing that. But I'm never going to be one that like brags about the speed or the level of
Hmm.
elevation or the gear that I had, because there's a fine line, right? Like there's just this other woman, Renee, and I forget the exact, I posted about this. She did the PCT section of Oregon
Okay.
and the fastest time ever, like world
Oh.
record for anybody
Wow.
unassisted, like this crazy, incredible accomplishment. She did it in like half the time. Like she did, I'll have to like actually look
Wow.
up the stats and
Yeah.
like put them on the screen for people watching the video episode. But like this incredible feat and that kind of shit, I have incredible respect for, where I'm like, that's
Totally.
amazing. That's
Yep.
so cool because she did it in a way of not being like, I'm going to do this accomplishment to prove that I'm better than you and you've suck because
Yeah.
you can't do it. She just did it to be like for herself. She's like, I want to see if I can do this thing. And if I
Mm-hmm.
can, amazing. If I can't, I still had a great time. And that's the difference, right? That's the difference when it's not like this
Totally.
competition or like
Yes.
this, I'm going to prove that I'm better than you because of X, Y, and Z. And you see this in the hiking community, you see this in the running community. I mean, all
Mm-hmm.
sorts of communities where it's like this competition thing. And like you said, virtue signaling almost. And it's like, who cares?
Literally, who
Did you
cares?
did you go out and have a nice time? Okay, cool.
I think there must be people in this world who are just so inherently competitive, and I am not one of those people. It does not seep into much of anything that I do, to be honest. And I don't know. I don't know what it is about it, but I'm just gonna ignore it. I'm gonna turn my head to the side and mind my own business, and they can keep it because ultimately, I think that they're trying to like get a rise out of people. Like they're not doing it, well, not all of them, but I think that a lot of them are doing it to like put other people down, not necessarily even
Hmm.
make themselves feel better. It's like being a bully, like you're not actually getting anything out of this. You just want me to feel shittier about myself. Sorry, can I say shitty?
Yeah, I've
Cool,
already
cool,
sworn
cool.
plenty in
Okay,
this. You're
good, good,
good.
good, good, good. Um, and that it is, it's like a bullying mentality. So if I
Hmm.
stop feeling bad about myself, then you no longer get anything out of it. Like it doesn't mean anything anymore. So I do my best to not think about it.
Yeah. I get comments like so that are always people punching down whenever I post like my videos about me camping out of my car. People being like, "Well, that's not
Oh,
real camping," and I'm like,
yeah.
"Didn't know it was a competition, dude." Like,
Right. Like I didn't know, and I'm not really playing your game.
yeah. And I also don't care if you don't think it's real because that's not why I'm doing
I
it. Is like
literally
for your
don't know
approval.
you. Like who are you? Like you came onto my that's the part that always gets me. I don't get a lot of hate, but you came onto my page to talk to me about what I'm doing. Like go get lost somewhere else. Like I don't need you in this area. Like I have no problems deleting and blocking. Not going to be here because again, like the tone that I want to set is so important to me and there's no room for any of that.
Yeah. Well, I think one of the common threads in our conversation and in some of the other conversations I've had on this podcast is like, yeah, a lot of the time we hear these stories about people either being shitty online or shitty on trail, and like those are the things that kind of like bubble up to the surface because they make the news or whatever and they seem
Mhm.
the loudest, but like they're actually pretty few and far between. The
Yes.
majority of the outdoorsy community is actually really lovely, like
Yeah.
really nice and
Yeah.
really supportive and like maybe someone who is, a hiker doesn't necessarily like mesh with your vibe or whatever, but they're going to be kind and they're not going to be an asshole about it. Like the majority of the people are like that. It's just
Mhm.
unfortunate that like sometimes these bad stories kind of like seem the loudest. So I think that's
Yeah.
sometimes a barrier for people when they
Mhm.
want to start hiking or camping or whatever it might be. They're like, "Oh, I'm not going to do it right, or people are going to judge me, or I'm going to have a bad experience, or run into a creepy man on the trail." But like
Mm.
the majority of your experiences are going to be positive. And I'm sure, like what you've said with the kind of group and the dynamics that you've cultivated with your hot girl hikes, like you've seen that firsthand. Like
Yeah.
everybody's been lovely. And even if people are different, it's this great kind of community that you've been able to develop.
Yeah, anytime that we ever encounter negative energy on a trip, it's an outsider. It's not an intern. The call is not coming from inside the house. We have had like a couple of different instances. Have you ever been to Virginia to Shenandoah National Park?
No, I haven't.
Okay, there is a hike there called Old Rag. It's like the big hike, similar to probably what you were talking about with Washington. It's like this big, super popular hike. It's pretty difficult. It takes most of the day. It's like 10 miles or something like that. Lots of elevation game and lots of rock scrambling and intense rock scrambling that you're hoisting, you're jumping, you're engaging all of these different parts of your body. Like it's challenging in a way that most people don't think about hiking. And that's what makes it fun for somebody to come and do. Unless you get somebody behind you that is huffing and puffing and getting upset because girls in your group who are doing this for the first time are taking a little bit longer than you would like them to. And I really had to keep it together so that I didn't turn around and get in these people's faces. But ultimately, that's not going to do anything except for cause a problem. But it's just like, God, does it really cost that much? You're outside, the sun is shining, the air is fresh. Like, take a beat. Like, are you competing again? Like, right, are you competing? Are you timing yourself? Is this seriously that big of a deal? Because go around. I'll get out of the way. You don't need to be right behind me because it's not that serious. And in the same like vein of it's not that serious, I want people to think about when things like that happen, when things like that happen to you and you feel like people are judging you or people are saying like, oh my God, why is that girl wearing that on the trail? Or, oh, she's taking too many pictures. She looks so stupid, or whatever it is that comes up. Take a breath. It's not that serious. That person is spending their time thinking about you because you're so cool, because you're so pretty and you're so cool, and they noticed you on the trail and now they're talking about you and thinking about you. And that is not like an inherently bad thing. So many people, I think get shy and stuff like that, but deep breath, move on, let it go, fly in one ear, out the other. Don't spend any time on it because they're miserable for talking shit about you. Like, it's really not your problem. It's them. And we're moving on and we're taking more pictures, actually. Pull your lip gloss out, strike a pose. We're hitting it.
I feel like I need you to be in my ear for all of my hikes because even still, I know these things in my head, but you forget them sometimes. Like,
it happens to me too.
Everybody has insecurities. And I think one of the things that I always get self-conscious about is like filming content and stuff out and about. Cause I'm like, oh, someone's going to see me like this girl in this cute outfit, like filming herself, and they're going to think I'm, vain and whatever. And I'm like, why do I care?
Yeah.
Literally, why do I care? It doesn't matter at all.
It happens to me too, though. Especially if I'm by myself, I'll overthink it. And if it's like in a crowded area, but again, like there's courtesy elements too, to like making content anywhere, like in public, like don't take up and hog the best spot just because you want to get 40,000 pictures of yourself. But we're not doing that because not only are we responsible outdoors women, we are also responsible content creators. So don't get on our backs.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh my gosh. I love it. So what else, like if we're thinking about, the outdoorsy community as a whole, whether you're someone who is a hot girl and wants to go for a hot girl hike, or you are like, that's not for me, but also I'm still not feeling like I quite fit into the outdoorsy community, but I want to, or they're facing some sort of barrier. Like we talk a lot on this podcast about like a lot of people from, groups that are historically marginalized, whether that be their body, their appearance, or their identity. Like, what can we do as the outdoorsy community to help people feel more welcome and more included?
Yeah, I think that's one thing that my particular group doesn't really struggle with. Like our biggest barrier usually is that we might feel uncomfortable if we encounter like a creepy guy, but because we're in a big group, it's pretty safe. So we don't get a lot of hate for the way that we look or have a history of like being excluded from groups like this. So I think for all of my girls, if you are a hottie hiker, go out of your way to like diversify what you're consuming at any given point. Make sure that your feed has lots of different kinds of people in it so that you're not just seeing one particular vision of what it means to be outdoorsy. Like there's people who have different handicaps and people who look different than you, come from different backgrounds, are hiking in a different part of the world, and not just because they like flew there for the weekend type of thing. So, just setting your expectations, I think, for what being outdoorsy means. And then when you're out and about in the wild, be polite to everybody. Make sure that if you, encounter somebody that is, hopefully you're never encountering somebody that's like actively being discriminated against, but go out of your way to like make sure that they're protected and, feel important, but you should be doing that for anybody. Like if you see somebody out on the street who's like getting bullied, like that would be crazy to not step up for them, but people don't. Like that's, what's that bystander effect, or like where that, this is like dark, but where that girl got unalived in the middle of the apartment building,
Yeah.
and all of her neighbors saw. What's that called? There's like a name for it, but you know what
Uh,
I mean?
it might just be the bystander effect, but yeah, like nobody called 911 because they
Yeah.
just assumed other people were calling 911.
Right.
Like, I
Right.
completely agree. It should never be that kind of situation when we're out in the wild. Like, if you see someone struggling, like, just go ask and see if they're okay,
Yeah.
or, something
But
happening.
people don't. Yeah.
Yeah, if you can keep yourself safe, like that's the thing that I always remind people too, is like your safety comes first. Like, that's one of the things where it is like, put your gas mask on first before you
Right.
help other people. So if you can stay safe, then you can stand up for someone else, but also keep your own person safe. Like, if it's an unsafe situation as a whole, get the hell out of there.
Yeah.
But
Right.
if you
Exactly.
can, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
But there's like, I mean, there's smaller things we can do. Like you were saying, it doesn't have to be like being a hero on a trail. It can
Right.
be just making sure that your social media feed is diversified and you are consuming content from people who, like you said, are in different places of the world, come from different backgrounds, look different from you. Like, you learn so much that way. I mean, you should be doing that anyways, but it definitely helps with just the outdoor community too.
Yeah. I guess it's just intentional. You can't
Hmm.
really just like assume that it's going to happen and then it never happens.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
One of the things that comes up oftentimes when we're talking about inclusivity and like getting more people outdoors, like encouraging more
Mm,
people to get out there and explore in whatever way that makes sense for you. One of the pushbacks we get from people, or like one of the reasons why some people think that they can take claim to the outdoorsy identity and other people can't, is because they're like, well, if more people are getting outdoors, then our lands and our wildlife are going to be
mm,
not great, or like our secret spots are going to be ruined, or
mm-hmm.
whatever that is. And I think there's some valid fears there, right? Like,
Sure.
I've seen places that I love be shut down for camping because people haven't followed leave no trace. And we've all
Mm-hmm.
kind of seen stuff like this happen at our national parks. Like, they start enacting timed entry reservation systems because there's just too many damn people coming. So like, how, I don't know, this is something I think about a lot, but like, how can we strike a balance between getting more people to get outside, getting people
Mm,
to feel empowered to explore whatever way that looks good for them, but also balances like being good stewards of the outdoors and protecting
yeah.
it?
Yeah, there's definitely rules to being outside, which I think a lot of people feel entitled to not follow because it is the outside. And, like when we're kids, you can use your outside voice when you're outside, and inside you have to be civilized. People think that they can just do whatever they want when they're outside. And we've definitely set that tone, I think, as a culture, like as Americans. We've like taken a lot of land and used it for a lot of different things that are harmful and not ultimately in its best interest. And people see it as something, it's like Pocahontas, like people see it as something to be owned. Like that song, the Colors of the Wind song, and you just think about whatever that definitely came up like in my childhood, and I that stuck with me for some reason. It's not something that's ownable. We've made it that way, but like ultimately the earth is its own entity. Like it's a living, breathing thing, and you need to be respectful of that. You would never, I remember like my PE teacher or something saying like, you would never like go up to your pet and pull its hair out. Like, why are you pulling the grass out of the ground? And that's just a very small example, but yeah, like the earth is dynamic and it is ever changing, and it has its own systems that are not like that don't conform to like human systems. Like we're supposed to be living in harmony with each other instead of like us trying to dominate the earth and try to make it what we want it to be. And there's a lot of cultures that honor that still, and unfortunately they've been like squashed and put out and told that they're not important because it doesn't generate revenue, because that's what we've decided. And now I'm getting down. Okay, I can stop. That's like a whole other rabbit hole.
No, this
But
is good. This is good. I mean, this is important conversation. So go down the
yeah.
rabbit hole if you feel inclined.
But it's just that we've decided that like ultimately making money is the most important thing,
Yeah.
at the expense of the planet that we're living on. And I struggle a lot with uh, like nature tourism, because
Hmm.
that's my whole shtick. That's my gig, is traveling to see all of these beautiful places, and then you show up and it's not what it was 15 years ago for the exact reason that you're there. I think Hawaii has struggled a lot with this. This isn't even accounting for like the impacts based on climate change. Like just getting on a plane to go somewhere has all these impacts on something that you love. And I don't have the answer to that. I think there's like the extreme of like staying in your house and not doing anything because you don't want to harm anything around you. And then the other extreme is saying, I don't care about anything that's going on around me. All I want to do is what I want to do. So making sure that you're like practicing leave no trace, not taking things out of the environments that you're in and not leaving anything behind, reading up about the lands that you're on, the struggles that they're maybe facing, if there's like a foundation, organization, or something like that to follow, even something that small, you don't have money to be donating or whatever, giving them a follow, giving them a share, like anything media related is always helpful, for nonprofits and stuff like that. And just being engaged. Like don't go and step all over a glacier or something like that and be like, wow, this was so cool, and not think critically about what's going on with that glacier in this year of our Lord 2024. It's not something that can be ignored anymore, and definitely is like the top of my my priorities list for the election this year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that everybody who has the capacity to think critically about these things and actually has some empathy, spends a lot of time thinking about this, who's in the outdoorsy community. Like, just from what you've said so far, I can tell that this is something that you think about a lot. And I know the majority of us are very hyper aware of. And I think that sometimes when you're starting to go outdoorsy and you are somebody who's like caring deeply about the impact of your actions, whether that be on the environment or the indigenous communities or whatever it might be, you can feel paralyzed because you're like, well, I don't want to be part of the problem, or like, I don't want to contribute to this issue more. I think that actually prevents a lot of people from actually going out and enjoying the outdoors in a way that actually helps provide support to either to local communities financially, because you're like spending money locally or investing in local tourism, which does help a lot in a lot of cases.
Totally.
Or it just like prevents the like good people who actually care from going out, and then all the people who are out there are crappy people who don't care.
Right.
And I think we sometimes get paralyzed because we think really big about stuff like, oh my God, like I have to donate all my money or I have to volunteer, and not everybody has the resources, the time, even just like the mental load of some of that stuff, like doesn't have the capability of like doing that all the time. And you don't have to do that stuff all the time. You can just do what you were saying, which is just being mindful and changing your intention of like how you're enjoying the outdoors is a great starting point. Like going out and going for a hike, not because you want to like conquer the land, but because you want to appreciate the fact that you have clean air to breathe. And the fact that this forest is still standing. And think about those things and just be mindful and like listen to the leaves rustling and like look at the water and like find some lovely connection with the nature. And like that, if you're going out with that kind of intention, like that's already doing more than what a lot of people do. So I think that hopefully people can feel encouraged who do care a lot and, like you and I, and are stressed about a lot of these things. Like you're valid in that.
Could you tell I'm stressed?
Yeah, no, like at the election. I'm thinking about when these episodes are going live too. I'm like, okay, I gotta take a like 2-week long break around the election because nobody's gonna be paying attention to anything.
Nope. That is so fair.
But I think I'm always surprised when people come into my comment section and are like saying shit that's like so bigoted and stuff. And I'm like, do you follow this page at all? Do you know anything about where I stand politically? Like, I'm not shy.
People are so weird. People on the internet are so weird and so entitled to just say whatever they want. And I will get into a fight. Do not test me.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh man. It's wild. Like whenever I lose followers about posting something politically, I'm like, why were you following me in the first place? Like literally don't understand.
Yeah. Like
what?
Honestly, good riddance. Like I don't want you here.
Yeah.
Like,
bye.
Goodbye.
So anyways, I
Uh,
feel like we really could go down a whole tangent on this, but I do think that like people get stressed when they're like, "Oh my God, I'm not doing enough." But like the
yeah.
fact that you're even thinking about what you can do
Yeah,
is a
yeah, yeah.
really great first step,
Step
right?
number
So,
one. Yeah. Because
yeah,
I do
yeah.
think that there's a way for people to exist in harmony with the planet. Like that is
Hmm.
100% possible. We're just not making it a priority. I
Yeah.
don't think that we're going to, like, I don't know, overload the planet with people or something like that. Like I don't think that there is this impossible scenario in front of us. I think we are just ignoring the obvious, which is that we need to deprioritize some things and prioritize others, and people just aren't willing to do that right now. So we have
Yeah.
to make them.
Yeah. So if this episode is coming out before the election, please get out there and vote like hell. If this is
Yeah.
coming out after the election, I don't know.
DM us. Let us know how you're feeling.
Well, yeah,
Oh,
we'll see how things are. So,
yeah.
before we kind of like wrap up, because I want you to talk about kind of like what's next for you and get a chance
Yeah.
to like plug some upcoming stuff. But before we get into that, like final words of encouragement or advice for anybody who just doesn't feel like they fit in with the typical stereotypical definition of outdoorsy, what would you say to them?
I would say join us because the Hot Girl Hikes would love to have you. We can convert you and make you just like us, or you can be exactly who you want to be. There is no rules about how to be a hot girl hiker except for that you are trying to love yourself. You know, you're doing your best. Otherwise, like, I want you to say, like, I'm so sexy, I'm incredible, I'm amazing. Like, if you can get all that out, say it loud and proud. But I'll help you get there if you are not quite there yet. And if you're not yet ready to be a hot girl hiker, that's fine too. Just go outside, like breathe the air, like feel the sunshine, wear some SPF, like please protect your beautiful face. But ultimately, you will feel better about pretty much everything if you just go outside, take a walk, don't take it so seriously.
I love it. 10 out of 10, no notes.
Yeah.
So on that, like if people are ready to be a hot girl hiker, like
Yeah.
what where should they go? What should they do? What upcoming
Yes.
trips and stuff do you have coming up?
Yeah, so I just announced 2025 trips a couple weeks ago. I'm doing 4 trips next year. One in April to the Great Smoky Mountains. We're gonna go to Dollywood. We are gonna go to through Cades Cove. We're gonna go to Alum Cave. We're gonna hit all of the big heavy hitter sites in the Great Smoky Mountains, and then Dollywood will be our like girly moment. It's gonna be real fun. Then in October, no, why did I just say that? In June, we are going to Rocky Mountain National Park. I went there for the first time this past June, July, and was blown away. Potentially new favorite park alert for me personally. I know, bold statement. We're going to go horseback riding. We are going to explore the tundra, go up into the mountains, go down in the valley, see some lakes. It's gorgeous out there. Wild, Wild West. In August, we're going to go, drumroll, to Glacier. This has been highly asked for by the community. I know it's a big bucket list park for a lot of people. And I'm going to make it happen. So we're going to do some whitewater rafting. We're going to do some hiking. Hopefully we don't run into a bear, but you know, if we do, then we'll have some bear spray on us, no big. And just see those beautiful glaciers I was talking about. And then in October next year, we will be at the 2-year anniversary of the very first ever Hot Girl Hikes trip. So we're going to go back to Zion National Park and add in a day at Bryce Canyon National Park. So we will hike the Narrows. We'll throw our names into the hat for the Angels Landing lottery, but no promises on that one. We'll at least get to the spot where you can't go any further. And see all of the amazing, I mean, Zion is just like incredible. It's beautiful. There's a reason that it's called Zion. Like it is otherworldly, heavenly, all of the above. And then Bryce is so unique, so interesting, and so close. So we're going to be making a 2-for-1 trip next year. None of those are yet open for registration. If you want to know about when registration is going to be live, you should go to hotgirlhikes.com. sign up for the email list. The email list gets all of the information first. And then you should also follow on socials. On Instagram, it's at Hot Girl Hikes XO. No spaces, no nothing. Then on TikTok, it's at Hot Girl Hikes.
Perfect. I will have all of those links for you in the show notes, wherever you are listening to this podcast. If it's on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, whatever it might be, all those links will be there too. So you don't have to like necessarily remember them. But yeah, I mean, this was so great. Thank you so much, Katie, for coming on
Thank you
and
for having
sharing your
me.
wisdom. Yeah, I mean, it's so refreshing. I mean, I feel like being outdoorsy can look so different for everybody. And
Yeah.
sometimes we tackle really big topics like racism in the outdoors and homophobia in the outdoors and like so many of these like really heavy things. But sometimes you can feel excluded or not like you're part of the typical outdoorsy community just because you're like, oh, well, I like to be like more girly. Like,
Mm-hmm.
and that's like kind
Yeah.
of a reduction of what you're doing. Like that's not totally what you're doing, but I mean, it can be as simple as that. And I
Yeah.
want everybody to feel like they are welcome. They belong out here. If they want to call themselves outdoorsy, they absolutely should feel empowered to do so. If they want to
Yes.
call themselves a hot girl hiker, they should feel
Yes.
empowered to do so, and that everybody is welcome out here. So thank you so much for coming on and sharing your wisdom with us.
Thank you so much for having me. I had an amazing time, and hopefully, some of your listeners can be Hot Girl Hikers soon.
I hope so. Well, thank you so much for joining us for this episode of Outdoorsy. Be sure to like and subscribe wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. And if you are interested in joining the Outdoorsy community even a step further beyond listening to this episode, you can become a patron on Patreon and gain access to the community Discord server. Katie, I haven't told you this yet, but you will be given access to that as well. So
Woohoo.
you might see her in there. The link is in the show notes as well. But yeah, thank you for listening. I hope everybody gets out there some way that makes sense to them and feels good to them. And remember that you belong out there.